I'm 83 years old, and I need to tell you something that would have made my younger self laugh in my face. For 70 years, I was absolutely certain there was no God.
I wasn't just an atheist. I was a crusader against religion, a scientist who believed only in facts, data, and what could be measured in a laboratory. I spent my entire career proving that faith was nothing more than wishful thinking. That religious people were either scared of death or too intellectually lazy to accept reality. I debated priests on television. I published papers tearing apart theological arguments. I wrote books explaining why belief in God was dangerous, primitive, and anti-progress. And I won those debates every single time because I had logic on my side. I had science. I had reason. My colleagues respected me. Universities invited me to speak. Students looked up to me as someone who had the courage to speak the truth that others were too afraid to admit. I raised my 2 children in a completely secular household. No prayers, no church, no bedtime stories about angels or heaven. When they asked about death, I told them the truth. When your body stops working, your consciousness ends. You return to the same state you were in before you were born. Non-existence. It's not scary, it just is. My wife, Margaret, she went along with it. She'd grown up Catholic but left the church in her 20s. We bonded over our shared rejection of religion. 2 rational people building a life based on science and reason, not superstition and fear. For 58 years, this worldview served me perfectly. I had answers for everything. Why do bad things happen? Evolution and randomness. What's the meaning of life? Whatever meaning you create. What happens after death? Nothing, and that's okay. I felt liberated. While others wasted their Sundays in church, I was hiking, reading, spending time with family. While others prayed to invisible beings, I was living in reality. I pitied religious people. I genuinely believed they were trapped in a delusion, too weak to face the cold, hard truth that we're alone in an indifferent universe. And then 3 years ago, everything I believed shattered in a single moment. Margaret got sick. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. The doctors gave her 6 months. For the first time in my life, science had no answers. Medicine couldn't save her. All my degrees, all my knowledge, all my certainty, it was completely useless. I watched the strongest person I'd ever known waste away. From 140 pounds to 89 pounds in 4 months. The woman who could hike 10 miles without breaking a sweat couldn't walk to the bathroom without help. And here's what broke me. She wasn't afraid. In those final weeks, she had this piece about her that I couldn't understand. She'd wake up in pain, unable to eat, barely able to breathe, and she'd smile at me and say, "It's okay. I'm not afraid." I thought it was the morphine, or denial, or her brain protecting her from the horror of what was happening. But 2 days before she died, she looked at me with completely clear eyes and said, "I know where I'm going, and it's beautiful." I didn't know what to say, so I just held her hand and nodded. But inside I was screaming because she was dying and there was nowhere to go. Death was the end, oblivion. Darkness. Nothing. She died on a Tuesday morning. I was holding her hand. One moment she was breathing, and the next moment she just stopped. Her body was still there, but she was gone. And for the first time in 70 years, I had no explanation that made sense. The funeral was secular, just like we'd planned. People shared memories, talked about her research, her kindness, her intelligence, and I gave a speech about her contributions to science. But it felt hollow, because I wasn't talking about her. I was talking about her accomplishments, her resume. Not the woman who laughed at my terrible jokes. Not the person who knew me better than I knew myself. The weeks after she died were the darkest of my life. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't focus on anything. And I started doing something that, as a scientist, I knew was irrational. I started talking to her out loud, even though I knew she couldn't hear me, even though I knew she was gone, erased, ended. But I'd be making coffee and I'd say, "Margaret," I burned the toast again. Or I'd see something on the news and think, she would have had the perfect response to this. And I'd say it out loud as if she were in the room. And sometimes, I swear, I felt something, not her ghost, not her presence, just something I couldn't explain. A warmth, a comfort, a feeling that somehow, in some way, she wasn't completely gone. And that terrified me, because it didn't fit my worldview. It didn't fit 70 years of certainty. It didn't fit everything I'd built my identity on. One morning, about 2 months after she died, I was walking past a church, a small community church I'd passed 1,000 times and never thought twice about. I heard singing, hymns, the kind of thing I would have rolled my eyes at a year earlier. But that morning I walked inside. I sat in the back. Nobody bothered me. The service was happening. People were singing about hope, about love lasting forever, about seeing their loved ones again. And I cried. For the first time since Margaret died, I cried. Not alone in my house, but surrounded by strangers who were all seeking the same thing I was: comfort, connection, some sense that death isn't the final word. After the service, an old woman approached me. She must have been 90, with kind, knowing eyes. She didn't ask my name or why I was there. She just said, "You've lost someone recently." I nodded. She smiled gently and said, "They're not gone. Love doesn't end when the body does. It can't. It's bigger than death." And I wanted to correct her. I wanted to explain that consciousness requires a functioning brain, that love is just neurochemistry, that when someone dies, they're gone forever. But I didn't, because in that moment, I needed her to be right more than I needed to be right. I started going back to that church. Not every week, but sometimes. I didn't pray, didn't sing, didn't believe. I just sat there, listening, feeling, allowing myself to not have all the answers for the first time in my life. I started reading books I'd dismissed my entire career: philosophy, theology, poetry, ancient wisdom from traditions around the world, not to find proof of God, but to understand what billions of people throughout history had found in these ideas. What was I missing by being so certain? And slowly something shifted in me. Not a dramatic conversion, not a moment where everything suddenly made sense, but a softening and opening, a willingness to admit that maybe, just maybe, I didn't know everything. I'm 83 years old now, and honestly, I still don't know if there's a God. I don't know if Margaret is somewhere waiting for me. I don't know if consciousness survives death or if love transcends the physical. I don't know. But here's what I've learned. Certainty is a trap. Being right all the time is exhausting. Explaining away every mystery makes life smaller, not bigger. For 70 years, I was so busy being certain that I closed myself off from wonder, from possibility, from the full spectrum of human experience. I reduced love to oxytocin, beauty to evolutionary preference, meaning to neural patterns. Everything could be measured, categorized, explained. And in doing so, I lost something essential: the ability to simply not know, to sit with mystery, to accept that some questions don't have answers, and that's okay. Margaret used to tell me that wonder was more important than knowledge. I thought she was being sentimental, but she was right. She was right about so many things. These last 3 years, living with uncertainty, have been harder than anything I've experienced. But they've also been richer, deeper, more human. I feel things I didn't let myself feel before. I'm open to ideas I dismissed before. I'm connected to people I would have looked down on before. I talk to Margaret every single day. I don't know if she hears me, but it doesn't matter. Talking to her keeps her alive in me, keeps our love alive. And maybe that's enough. If I could go back and talk to my 30-year-old self, so confident, so certain he'd figured out the mysteries of existence, here's what I'd say: you don't know anything yet, and that's not a weakness. That's an opportunity. Stay curious. Stay humble. Let people find comfort in whatever brings them peace without needing to prove them wrong. Admit when you don't know. Embrace mystery, because life is so much stranger and more beautiful than any theory can capture. Don't spend 70 years being certain about things you can't possibly know. Don't close yourself off from wonder because it doesn't fit your worldview. And most importantly, don't wait until you're 80 and alone to realize that love, connection, and meaning matter more than being right. I was an atheist for 70 years. And now, I honestly don't know what I am. Maybe agnostic, maybe spiritual, maybe just an old man who finally learned that not knowing is okay. That mystery is a gift, not a threat. Margaret always said I'd figure it out eventually. Took me long enough. Don't make my mistake. Don't let certainty steal your wonder. Don't wait 70 years to open your mind. Life is short, death is real, and everything in between is stranger and more mysterious than we can possibly understand. I'm 83 years old. My wife is gone. And for the first time in my life, I'm okay with not having all the answers. Maybe that's faith. Maybe it's wisdom. Maybe it's just what happens when you finally stop pretending you know more than you do. Whatever it is, I wish I'd found it sooner.